Now, there have been countless UFO sightings over the years, but many experts consider this next piece of footage the gold standard. Take a look for yourself. It's just after dark on August 25th, 2013, in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. The crew of a United States Customs and Border Patrol plane is taking off for a routine mission when they notice a strange pinkish light approaching from the northwest. They turn on their thermal imaging camera to track the object, and this is what they see. Let's take a closer look. It appears to be a metallic sphere moving fairly quickly around the airport. Then it heads out over the ocean where it does something truly unexpected. Did you catch what happened? Let's zoom in. The object seems to splash down in the water before re-emerging seconds later. Even more bizarre, the object then splits into two separate craft. And people, there is no known Earth technology that can do that. After nearly 4 minutes, the object disappears from view. Now, Puerto Rico is the location for several sightings of so-called USOs, unidentified submerged objects. Back in the 1990s, a Navy helicopter pilot allegedly saw an unidentified dark underwater mass during a training exercise. Another published report describes a similar incident in 1963 during an anti-submarine exercise led by the USS Wasp.
They keep talking about these incidents occurring around their aircraft carriers, naval ships. Puerto Rico, long history of interesting sightings, very long history.
What makes this video so special is that it comes straight from a $1 million infrared camera mounted on a government plane. There's a ton of data to analyze here. So what do our experts think?
It's a credible case, it's a credible video.
Richard Hoffman heads the Scientific Coalition for Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon. First question, is the video real?
The telemetry you see on the screen showing GPS location identically matched what you had with radar. So there really was an aircraft.
Next, Hoffman's team determines the object's temperature to help identify it. They compare the heat signature of the craft to some cows on the ground in this frame at the top of your screen.
We broke the video into 256 shades from white to black, all different shades of gray. And we were able to match that up with the temperature of the cows to match the temperature of the object. The object was roughly at about 104 degrees.
Right away, that eliminates a jet engine, which emits exhaust 15 times hotter.
The thermal signature doesn't match anything that we know now, and there's no sign of any kind of propulsion system on this.
Then they figure out the object's size using this frame when the object goes behind a light post 2 pixels wide.
Okay, well, the object went behind it was blanked out. So now maybe it's 2 pixels. That's why we come up with it's about 3 to 5 feet in diameter.
Based on that analysis, Hoffman says the most likely earthly explanations are eliminated.
We ruled out that it wasn't a balloon. It was about 18-mile-an-hour winds from the northeast, and this object was going in opposite directions from that. So it's clearly not a balloon.
What about a drone? Our aviation expert, Tim McMillan, is skeptical.
How are you achieving flight without an airfoil, without an angle attack, without wings, to simplify it? How are you doing that?
And finally, a bird?
We took a look at thermal signatures of birds and various other objects, and it doesn't match anything like this. And there you go. It's unidentified. It's not from any place here.
So is it proof or not? Well, you might think it's a bird, a balloon, or a man-made aircraft, but it is hard to explain how this goes in and out of the water and splits. So folks, we're gonna call this a UFO. You almost never see an object like this going into and out of the water. That's amazing. It's Independence Day in Alamance, North Carolina, and a local man is enjoying a barbecue with his family. Fireworks are going off intermittently, So he's been looking at the sky all evening when he suddenly sees something even more spectacular.
It's moving. It's moving slow.
It's a classic orb-shaped UFO, the kind we've seen in several videos. Some real, some fake. And what makes this footage extra special is that it goes on for more than 8 minutes.
God, I wish I had some binoculars.
Now look at what happens here at the 6.5-minute mark.
Oh, wow.
Hey, look at that.
Something's coming off of it. Two things are coming off of it.
Where's that guy? Where is it at?
One went up and one's coming down.
Where is it?
Holy crap. Look at this.
The orb seems to bifurcate, and seconds later, it splits again.
Oh, now something's coming out of the other one. Holy third one's coming out.
There's 3 different. Oh my God, that's crazy.
Like other orbs seen around the world, this one had no wings or obvious means of propulsion. It's hard to judge its speed, but others have been clocked by commercial pilots at over 500 miles per hour.
And it's pulsating too, man. That is nuts.
Journalist Alexis Brooks, who writes and speaks about UFOs, says the duration of this sighting is important.
Some individuals that have long contact encounters, that is, exceeding 5 minutes or more, may actually be having a literal contact encounter without them being consciously aware of it. Could it be that non-human intelligence or the occupants of the craft were actually making contact with the witness and vice versa?
Yeah, we got some action going on here, boys.
The witness said he later tried to find some earthly explanation for the incident, even checking with a nearby military base. But to this day, he says he's gotten no answers. Our experts may be able to change that. Our video analyst, Mark D'Antonio, begins by looking at the surrounding factors involved in this event.
I stepped through it frame by frame to try to isolate the components and equate them with something that we might already know. It's actually pretty high altitude.
For starters, D'Antonio's positive it couldn't be a bird.
Birds don't have that kind of reflectivity to them. Even geese at high altitude, you can still detect that they're birds.
He's just as sure it's not a plane or a drone.
Planes and drones, they have to follow Federal Aviation Administration rules for lighting, and this object had none of that.
Nor could it be a natural phenomenon like a meteor. It just hangs in the sky too long.
Meteors are momentary objects. They go through the sky, and then they're gone.
So what was it? The secret could be in that strange splitting.
Here you can see, in this image, you can see how it's a teardrop shape, and these objects are falling away. And the object that's way up there has changed brightness tremendously. Now, my thinking takes me down the path of weather balloon.
It certainly wouldn't be the first time a weather balloon was mistaken for a UFO. In fact, the government initially claimed it was a weather balloon that caused the Roswell incident. But that still doesn't explain how this thing could split apart and move off in different directions.
I would guess that this is a weather balloon where whatever was attached to it broke off. And when something like this happens, the resistance of the air will tend to streamline it and make it more into a teardrop shape. And that shape is what I think we're seeing here.
That theory sounds plausible, but then, to our surprise, atmospheric scientist Deanna Hintz shoots it out of the sky.
So I do think it's really unlikely that this is any kind of, weather instrument. They come down on a little parachute, and they wouldn't emit light this brightly like this. It doesn't seem to be meteorologically related.
You see it, Dean? You see a UFO?
So America, is it proof or not? It doesn't appear to be a bird or a plane. Could it be a weather balloon? Maybe. But a local weather service later told the witness there were none in the area. Until we get more solid information, we're going to call this a genuine UFO. It's January 9th, 2017, and we're in the heel of the Italian boot. At 7:38 p.m., Lucio Margiotta, a teacher at the Music Academy of Salento, records something strange in the sky.
Guarda tu cellulare che sto fermo.
A glowing orb appears to bob in the sky. Then it slowly expands into an elongated cigar-like shape.
Si sta aprendo?
And continues to expand until it forms a circular donut.
Oh mio Dio, signore.
The light phases or shifts from a greenish hue to white. Then the light reverts back to its original shape and color before fading away.
No, guarda, guarda, mo adesso si è fatta di nuovo.
When we look to the skies, there are certain things that we expect to see there. A really bright star, a drone, a satellite, a meteor. What we're seeing in this video doesn't look like any of those things.
Lucio's video is just the latest in a millennia of strange sights over Italy.
Roman myth is rife with the gods behaving in strange ways that would often resemble odd lights in the sky.
The Roman historian Livy wrote of phantom ships seen gleaming in the sky. Classical paintings depict what appear to be flying saucers. And it didn't stop in the Renaissance.
In October 1954, UFOs actually stopped a football game in Italy. 10,000 people witnessed some strange ships up in the sky.
Then in December of 1978, the New York Times reported a rash of donut-shaped objects spotted in the skies over Italy. So we have a wide variety of Italian ovni, and there are other accounts like this one from Oregon of light undergoing shape and color shifts like the one Lucio reported. So what exactly is happening in the Italian skies? We've seen mystery rings in the sky before, but those turned out to be emissions from nearby smokestacks. They didn't emit any light. So let's turn to our expert in all things weather-related, Deanna Hintz.
The weather was pretty calm with only scattered clouds, so there wasn't anything really happening during this particular time to suggest any kind of electrical activity from, say, a thunderstorm or something like that.
Hintz considers if it could be related to rings that form around the sun called halos and sundogs. There are similar ones around the moon.
Light passing from either the sun or the moon is bent and refracted by ice crystals that are very high up in the atmosphere. And you will see a sometimes brilliant halo around that light source.
Some look almost like UFOs with one big difference.
But you would still see the source of the light, either be the sun or the moon, in the center of that halo. Whereas here in this video, that center light source is blocked.
Astronomer and video effects designer Mark D'Antonio notes that Lucio is zoomed into his camera's maximum magnification, which can exaggerate any distortions in the image.
It was shot with a cell phone camera, and they're just not that good at taking nighttime photographs. The camera itself may have some junk on the lens. See, as it goes in and out of focus, okay, it's almost like there's moisture on the lens, and he's just getting some video artifacts. I mean, if there's any kind of moisture on the lens, you can actually create some really kaleidoscopic objects from your camera.
But while D'Antonio says that lens issue might create the circle image and the phasing, he still can't pinpoint the original source of that light in the sky. He rules out a laser or spotlight because they would have to reflect off the clouds. And it was a clear night. Beyond that, he's stumped.
I'm not saying that it's not an actual unidentified flying object. So it's a mystery. We don't know what it is exactly.
There's currently no official explanation for this video from the Italian government. If the light came from a drone, a plane, or a helicopter, you would think they would have said so. So our verdict, a genuine ovni. And in the absence of any further evidence, this object remains unidentified. November 2020 on the coast of Cornwall in southwest England, a live webcam viewer is recording a gorgeous sunset. But the footage captures something more than a postcard-worthy seascape. A glowing orb races onto screen, hovers, then rockets straight up and out of frame. Watch again. Rapid deceleration and then vertical flight. It appears to rocket almost 3,000 feet straight up in less than a second.
That indicates some sort of space-time distortion.
Anthropologist Michael Masters has a theory about who might be in such a craft.
It's important to consider our own evolution and our technological and biological evolution to the sense that maybe they're us. Maybe they're coming from the future to examine their own hominin evolutionary past.
Masters believes that if future humans can manipulate time to travel into the past, they might also be able to build spacecraft capable of these remarkable maneuvers.
This would also make sense in the context of what we see in this video. As this craft flies in at tremendous speed and stops instantaneously, and then accelerates at tremendous speed.
G-force is a measure of acceleration, with 1 G the force Earth exerts on us. And at first glance, it looks like G-force generated by this object's acceleration would be off the charts.
I've never seen any device that can stop on a dime and take off at maximum velocity. So I would suspect that if this is for real, it's either an experimental craft by the military or, let's face it, possibly an extraterrestrial civilization.
The forces suggested by this video pose a technical problem for the time travel theory. Today's astronauts endure about 3 Gs on liftoff. At around 6 Gs, the average person can black out. Past 100 Gs, the forces can shatter bones and squash our organs. So if this is a craft transporting humans from the future, how would they survive? Is another explanation more plausible? Let's turn the video over to our experts.
Forensic video analyst Michael Primo checks to make sure this video isn't a fake.
I don't detect any evidence to support that this has been fabricated or that this object has been inserted into the video recording. I've examined dozens of UFOs and UAPs over the years, and I have seen some objects that travel at a high rate of speed. This is exhibiting similar characteristics.
So the video is legit, and the object's rapid movement is consistent with other UFO sightings. But that doesn't rule out every existing human technology.
A leading theory would be a drone.
But Tim McMillan says a secret military drone wouldn't be out in public. And regulations for commercial drones make that explanation unlikely.
First of all, for commercial drones, they're capped off at 300 feet for regulation purposes. So it's hard to get an accurate gauge on altitude and everything, but we can see it move through the cloud cover out of frame. So it definitely appears to be exceeding that 300-foot maximum that you would expect with a commercial drone. This one's unique. I don't know that I have a very good explanation for it, frankly.
Astronomer and video effects designer Mark D'Antonio wonders if the object might be something else entirely, a reflection.
If this is a webcam, are we seeing this through a window? Does that mean there is something being put on the window, like a laser pointer, that is moving across the window, causing this to look this way?
But look at the rest of the frame. There are no other reflections, suggesting there's a glass window between the camera and the image it's recording.
I can't tell from this, so I can't come to any reasonable conclusions.
This one seems to have stumped just about everyone. So that leaves Master's time travel theory. What does D'Antonio make of it?
We've already figured out that we might be able to go faster than the speed of light by using a warpage of space-time. And NASA's got a funded lab looking at this because they think it's a possibility down the line.
And recent research indicates that a wormhole, another warpage in space-time, could be used to travel through time.
You know, sometimes science fiction does become science fact, and it's a possibility.
So, our verdict? Well, it's not a hoax, and it's not a plane or a drone, and it's not a laser pointer. Until we can identify it conclusively, we'll consider this a genuine UFO. But look, we really want to get to the bottom of this. If you have any more information about this clip, please reach out and let us know.
March 2021, the good people of Wichita, Kansas are going about their business. Property manager Mike Marler is one of them.
I was on my lunch break and I was going back to work and I was getting off on my exit.
Mike glances to his right and spots this.
What the fuck is this? I noticed in the sky there was something silver. It was long, it was shiny, it was moving very, very fast, so it was very challenging to get a really good angle. What is it?
We slow it down and zoom in, but even then it seems to race out of frame.
And then in a matter of seconds, it just disappeared.
When Mike posts the video to social media, he learns that dozens of others saw the same object. UFOs in Kansas are nothing new. In 1972, one of the world's most famous UFO encounters occurred in Delphus, Kansas, witnessed by 16-year-old Ronnie Johnson on his family farm.
All of a sudden, a large object descended, began hovering over his backyard, and then disappeared, but it left burn marks on the ground.
Ronnie's mother took a picture of this strange circle.
We call it a physical trace case. We also know that there was a slight increase in radiation around the area where the UFO was compared to soil further away from the site.
Did the people of Wichita witness something similar?
There were a lot of eyes on this one. So unless we're dealing with a massive hoax, the video is real. And given the Sunflower State's history with UFOs, it's worth asking our experts if this is proof of an extraterrestrial encounter or a case of mistaken identity.
Our aviation analyst, Tim McMillan, first tries to determine where Mike was when he spotted the object.
As they were filming, they passed several street signs. And so that allows you to narrow down exactly where they are and what direction they're facing.
McMillan uses the location and timestamp on the video to compare it to the flight data from that day. He zeroes in on one craft that is occasionally mistaken for a UFO over Wichita.
The NASA Super Guppy is a very odd-shaped, wide-body cargo aircraft that can even be used to transport the space shuttle. There was one in Wichita that day.
The Super Guppy can carry up to 26 tons of payload. It looks like a cross between a cargo plane and a Zeppelin. NASA itself says it's often mistaken for a UFO, especially when its reflective metal catches the sun. And it frequently flies in and out of Fort McConnell, right near Wichita.
But when you look at the flight radar data from that particular day, the Super Guppy was actually several hundred miles away to the southwest. So we can say with absolute certainty this was not the Super Guppy that was being filmed here.
With all the military bases in the area, McMillan thinks it might have been some sort of test.
Could this be some type of drone testing here where we're testing autonomous drone in-flight refueling?
But McMillan can't be sure, and Mark D'Antonio thinks it looks too square and thin to be a normal plane.
It almost looks like it's kind of waving a little bit in the wind. So the next question is, could it be one of those advertising banners that's towed behind these light planes? And the answer is that theory actually matches this the best.
But McMillan disagrees and points to his research on flight data that day as proof.
There isn't anything in that vicinity that's showing up on that flight data. Whatever aircraft it is, it's not operating a transponder, so it's not going to be a civilian aircraft. It's not going to be a commercial aircraft.
So, what do we think? The Guppy, a banner, a top-secret craft, or none of the above? Without more evidence, we're going to call this a genuine UFO. But please reach out to us if you have any more information.